Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the podcast. Right before we get started, I just want to let you know that this is going to be a little bit different from the podcast that we usually do. We're diving super deep into some certain declassified CIA documents. Some of this stuff is negative, but if you end up making it to the end of this video, I promise you that you'll have so much new information and so much more of a grasp on what's really going on in reality. So when we talk about certain concepts, try your best not to just say, "Oh, they're conspiracy theories," because you can look up this information yourselves. Don't just take it from us. So, having said that, Truman, welcome back to the show.
Brad, thanks for having me. Great to be back. Excited
Hey,
to go deep today.
glad you're here, man. So the first question I wanted to ask you was, do celebrities sell their souls, and what does that concept even mean?
Getting right into it. So, great question. I mean, again, I'm going to just kind of prelude. I know I did this last time, and I'll do this on every video I ever make, or at least in every channel I ever have, or every video podcast. It's just my opinion that I'm giving. I don't know anything for fact or for certain. Even the things I believe are very likely to be true. I cannot say for certain that I know anything to be a fact. Do I believe people are selling their souls? Yes. Do I believe that based on a lot of logical proof? Absolutely. And why that's happening, I think is a very deep question we should get into. But I think the more simple question to answer is why are we in an environment where that isn't something that takes place? Because I think that's where this starts, right? People wouldn't maybe go out seeking something like this, but it's offered to people, and that's kind of what we're going to probably get into. But I think the overarching kind of problem is that there's a group of people who have mastered the arts of occult practices, and so they have found a way to leverage that knowledge to gain power in the material and the physical world. And because we live in a world where we don't give much credibility to the spiritual realm, they're able to use that power without anyone really understanding or knowing it's even happening.
For anyone watching, this is how I first discovered this concept. I think you could just look up on YouTube, unless they've taken the videos down, which I don't think they have, of just celebrities talking about this concept of selling their soul. And there'll be compilations that are 10, 20, 30 minutes long. Each clip is like 30 seconds of tons, tons of all these well-known celebrities, musicians, actors, actresses, in all these different areas that, they have fame. And they openly say it. They openly say, "Yeah, I sold my soul," and we're all sitting down here and we're like, "Selling your soul? What are you talking about?" Like these guys, everyone's coming out and saying it, but this is like the information that we hear, but we choose not to accept because it's like, well, why would I look deep into all the crazy stuff that's going on in Hollywood and the government when I could just sit back and enjoy my movies still and not really see the dark side of it? It's and to a degree, ignorance is bliss. You don't want to know what's going on. You live your life, and that's it. For obviously people like me and like you, we grasp a little bit of what's going on. And we're like, all right, now I need to know really the depths of it.
Absolutely. People are not always neglecting this information because they're consciously processing it and they don't want to accept it. There's blocks, layers and layers of blocks that are preventing their conscious mind from recognizing that their subconscious is built up with having heard selling your soul be joked about and made a mockery of for so many years of their lives. And I think that's exactly what kind of happens is this type of stuff. Even if an artist is openly saying no laughter, no change of tone, very serious, I sold my soul, they can always find a way to justify that through it's a joke, or why would they say that if it wasn't a joke? I don't blame people for not understanding or accepting that. I think there is a certain level where it's like you have to first focus on yourself and what's going on in your world to start to then be able to focus more on the external. Why it's happening and why people are doing this, kind of your original question, is it's tough to answer, but I like to ponder why. And I think it kind of is one of two things. People, assuming they get to this point where this is presented to them, they have probably two trains of thought. One, like, what happens if I don't do this? And that's like the first side of this. Like, if these people have already spent years lots of money, lots of time getting to a certain point, and then this is the gate. And if they don't go into it, they don't know what happens then. And there may be fear, there may be threats associated with that gate. And so I imagine people sometimes accept it, knowing their fate, but understanding that it seems better in the short term than losing all they've worked for. And then the second side of things, I think, is people don't understand what they're getting themselves into. They have not found what is their purpose and their, for lack of a better word, God and meaning to assign and derive from this world. So they again, they discredit the spiritual aspect of our world, and so they think, sure, I'll sign something. I really have to give some of my blood on this. Like, that's weird, that's funky, but they're not thinking, oh, this could have, eternal effects, which again, I don't know if it does. Maybe that's the bluff, and these people are actually scot-free. They'll be fine, and they do get riches. But I do think that's one thing that's undoubtable, is that when you see people, just off the top of my head, like people who rise to fame too quick, and Jack Harlow, Aiden Ross, some of these guys you're seeing from Twitch, and you can always see like when that just happens, and these people are clearly, whether they know what they're getting themselves in or not, they accept it because they're so short-sighted. They see money, they see fame and luxury, and they don't even think twice. So I think that's the main motivator for people, and unfortunately, the world sort of rewards that mindset. So I think there's a lot of tools working against everyone in our minds, and these opportunities get presented to people. They have to have a very, very, very strong level of will, and also equally understanding, and then they have to act on it in the right way. So I imagine it's very, very difficult. But I do feel confident if I were ever to get that opportunity, I don't think they'll ever, I don't think I'm their type. But if I were, I'd like to believe I would have that, the will and the understanding of, I know what this is and I will not do it, and the will to say, I don't care what's on the other side, how great it is. No.
We don't know how exactly it works. Like, do guys in suits with sunglasses come up to you who look like Men in Black and say, "Here, sign this contract. We want you in." Blah blah, blah. I don't know how it works, but one of the points that you were like speculating about, and that I think about too, is like, what happens if you're presented with this opportunity and you say no? It's like you now have the knowledge that it exists. Are they gonna let you walk free, get out of jail free card, with just
Yeah.
walking around the earth with that information now? Maybe if you say no, you have to sign something else. All right, you can never talk about what we talked about here today, et cetera, et cetera. I'm sure there's
Right.
all tons of stuff like that in place. It's thrown out there so lightly. These guys who rise to fame so quickly, and I mean, to a certain degree, you can understand as to why people would say yes to these types of things. Let's just give an example of, let's say you came from a really low income family, like you never had any money in your life, and you developed this skill and you worked really hard at it, and now there's these people coming to you saying you have to do this, this, and this, and this, but you're going to have all of this, and it's like, well, why wouldn't I take that opportunity, right?
Right.
And so it's just, I think there's definitely a divide in, like, let's say me and you were presented that with that information, someone else was, someone else. I think there's so many different ways to perceive that.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I like one thing you said there. It's like they get to that point, and that's the thing people, I think, who don't believe in selling your soul kind of get stuck, is like, well, these are hardworking, talented people in a lot of cases. They have real backstories, and whether or not those success stories were spun up by some, program 2 weeks before everyone knew about them, we'll never know, because the people have the power over the internet like that. But either way, usually there are these real stories, and a lot of times there's people who know them from high school, whatever. So I don't think that this is just some like everyone who's famous is a part of this, but I think that everyone who seeks to go to a certain level, to walk into certain rooms, to affect certain industries, and it's not an infinite amount, it's a select few of these rooms and these industries, but they're owned. And this entertainment is one of those industries where you can't go out right now, start a record label, and go with an infinite amount of time and hard work. You still couldn't go and capture some A-list level artists without finding out what's going on and how the industry operates now. A lot of times these are real people who are working their lives to get somewhere. And to your point, they just don't fully see like a logical reason not to. And that's somewhat understandable. But at the end of the day, like, it's coming from being deceived. They're never being given the full story. No one's reading the contracts, I'm sure. And so I'm sure this is, it's just a very light process where people are just, yeah, like you said, they don't know what they're getting themselves into, and it seems like, why would I not? When in reality, they are maybe making one of the worst decisions, if not the worst of their life. You're supposed to go educate everyone that they may at some point in their life have to face someone offering this to them, and how important it is to say no. No, you got it to a certain point, help people, just guide people to help understand on their own that they have a soul, and that that is a real thing. At least for me, that's where I really start to believe this, is my own belief in my own soul has led me to understand that that is probably the greatest treasure that I personally have the pleasure to have.
Yeah, I mean,
I believe in my soul, is what I'm saying.
right, right. I mean, that makes me think of the idea of segueing a little bit of
Yeah.
just it seems like we're all so distracted from our soul, you could call it, or our true selves, or the real us, or just what we deep down want for ourselves. Everybody already knows that the world is full of distractions. Social media, this, the news, this and that. Everyone knows everything's out there to get your attention. Attention is the new currency. Money's still very important, but attention is number two. And every company, every business, everybody's competing for your attention. Ever since society was built, this is obviously a thing. But especially nowadays with the inventions of new technologies, it's bigger than ever.
Hmm.
You got all these OnlyFans models, and you got all the guys who look like they've made $10 million overnight, and now we all feel like we're not good enough because I don't have $10 million, and I've been working on my business for 2 years. Like, what's going on? All these false realities that we perceive as an actual reality that just completely fuck up our minds.
Definitely. And those are being fed to us. I notice everywhere I look, like, everything is trying to steal my attention, and a lot of those things are doing that with malice. They're trying to steal my attention for the purpose of getting me to consume something, and then in many cases consume something that is unhealthy. And for what purpose? To get me to consume something unhealthy so I get sick, so then I go consume something else. And you see, like, this all ties together, is kind of the point, is like, it's a system, and people struggle to understand how one industry, like the entertainment industry or the medical or whatever, could be controlled by such a few people. Regardless of how many people it is, the point is that, like, it should be clear everything operates in this world in a hierarchy, and at a certain point, like, there are only going to be a certain few people with money and with power making decisions, and if those people find ways to agree with the people who are in their ecosphere, their level of the game, other owners, other high level figures. All they have to do is reach the agreement that cooperation will benefit them more than competition. And I believe they've done that probably centuries ago. And they've been building this entire world in a way to make us believe there is capitalism and democracy taking place. But I believe it's an illusion, and they're all the distractions are leading us to the same place, which is living in a low vibration, not achieving anything that's going to mess up their plan, and dying. And that sounds messed up, but that's their goal. That's all they care about, is, it seems.
Video on your TikTok page, that giant picture of, we all know all these different companies and organizations, and we're like, oh yeah, this person is this, and this is its own individual thing. But you look at this picture, like, wait a minute, basically every single company I know is owned by like between two and five giant organizations. It's like everything is owned by the same people, and that leads me into the question of what is Vanguard and BlackRock, for example.
Yeah, I mean, this is sort of not my area of expertise. It would have probably been, had I gone a different route with my page. I thought about it very heavily. It actually I kind of timed up back like probably almost a year ago now, where I was really thinking about this being my channel, my page, and then I saw this guy cancel this clothing company. He's got a great channel. It's blowing up. He makes really good videos proving that BlackRock and Vanguard own everything. And he does it by going to grocery stores, taking pictures of an ice cream aisle or a makeup aisle or a soda aisle, and then he'll highlight in one color. All these are owned by Vanguard, all these are owned by BlackRock. That's the family owned one. And in most cases it's 60-40 Vanguard BlackRock, or I should say, 60-38, and then 2% family owned. And that's just the consistent trend. And to speak on what I do know, these are asset management companies, enormous asset management companies managing hundreds of billions, maybe trillions of dollars. It sounds a lot more complicated when they talk about the financial sector, like asset management, and what does that mean? And they only own 12% of a company. How does that matter? But the main thing to understand is that these are the people who are holding people's money and choosing, deciding what to do with it. They take in everyday people's money like a bank, but then they're investing that for people into wherever they choose. They have clearly demonstrated that they pick and choose the players they want. They buy the companies, majority shares in the companies they want to control. And at this time, like most public companies, if you own 8, 10, 15%, you're the majority shareholder. If not you, then the CEO or someone who's going to be that high level figure anyway, who's probably going along with BlackRock and Vanguard. I don't know how much power they have in the global system, but I imagine it rivals the power of the Federal Reserve, probably more than them, probably the House of Rothschild, like some of the richest trillionaire Saudi families. I believe they're probably up there in terms of like some of the most powerful money managing figures in the world. They've proven they support plenty of companies who have nothing but intentions to harm people.
Seems like they have the money to make any company they would like to be successful or get it to that level or whatever level it is. I know in terms of like, let's say something like McDonald's, when they hire neuroscientists to figure out what exact proportion. I don't know if you said this on your channel or I saw it somewhere else. Like they figure out the exact proportion of what chemical or what food ingredient to put into the cheeseburger that's going to make it the perfect savor, the perfect flavor, and everything. And just hiring neuroscientists to make sure it's as addictive as possible. And I'm sure they don't just do that with McDonald's, they do that with Instagram and Snapchat and TikTok and food and everything on the planet. I know when I first started discovering this stuff and looking into it, like it was overwhelming at first. It was a little scary. It's like this is the way the world's being run. What am I even doing with my life? This is crazy stuff. But I think just the overall gist of it is just, you don't have to get super deep into it. You just have to understand the foundations of, listen, McDonald's and most of these other companies and businesses don't have my best interest in mind. Let me make sure I don't have a habit of eating McDonald's 30 days out of the month, right? And so, it's just understanding, not dwelling on, just understanding it to a light degree of, all right, there's horrible chemicals. This maybe I shouldn't eat it. Maybe I should choose a more healthier option, and just going through all down all those routes.
Yeah, I mean the point you're making, which I think is like something I like to repeat is to people is you can't make an informed decision without accurate information. And like it's quite simple. Like most people are not getting the information that is accurate about what they're eating or about what they're putting in their bodies, and that's somewhat, a result of people just being willfully ignorant. They don't care to look it up. They probably hear these things and they think, well, McDonald's is cheap and I go there 5 days a week and whatever. Like it's not like this is public news. So if people were dying, like I would know. Well, sure, but that's willful ignorance. And so I think that's part of it. The other part is people just don't. There's too many distractions, right? The past week, the only thing they've thought about is Taylor Swift at the Travis Kelce show because that's the only thing that's been fed to them in terms of information. And so yeah, I think at the end of the day, people have to just do their research on their own. What I try to do consistently, I don't know if you've seen, but I've been less active on my channel. Um, Reasons for that, which I'm happy to get into, but like mainly the point I'm making is in my real life, in the real world, I'm trying to be this source of logical, rational decision making. And I'm not trying to convince people that any information is true or not. I'm going with this philosophy that if I'm taking the actions that I believe are logical based on the information I know, then hopefully these actions lead me to a place that is more desirable. And so that way I can, with my actions, show people that information you're choosing to put into yourself is leading you one way, and the decisions you're making because of it are leading you that way as well. This is how you switch it. I've seen so little success in trying to convince people who don't want to know something they don't want to hear. It just doesn't work.
Like being able to love and care about yourself, because I think once you get to a point where you care about yourself enough, like everybody already knows, like we don't need to do the research of that McDonald's isn't healthy for us. This is publicly known information that the McDonald's isn't healthy for you, and people, choose to do it anyway. I'm not saying this to try and offend people and say you're stupid because you're addicted to eating McDonald's. I'm not saying any of that. I just think it really takes like another level of care and understanding of yourself to really be able to have the willpower to put down going to McDonald's too often. And of
Yeah.
course, with any sort of addiction, whether it's something more severely like drugs and stuff like that, of course, there's a process to that, and you can't just put it down the next day. But I think it all starts with awareness, realizing that a lot of this stuff isn't good for you. So incorporating it less and less into your life. Like maybe you're not even going to completely cut out McDonald's of your life, but if you eat there 5 times a week, if you cut it down to once every 2 weeks, that's a ton better. Like you are making a ton of progress, 100%.
Yeah, and I know you and I agree wholeheartedly that like you don't measure yourself on like being somewhere, getting to a certain point. You measure yourself on progress. Like, are you putting one foot in front of the other? So I completely agree with that, and I think that's just fundamental in everything people do is like they lack self-love because they're measuring themselves based on results. And the more you measure yourself based on results, the less you're going to feel good about yourself because there are just less results than there are steps forward. So if you're able to measure yourself by every step forward you take, you'll just grow to have more appreciation for it. You'll also probably realize that, you know, the results don't actually fulfill you. It's the process. Somehow, you think every time it's going to be when you get something or somewhere, but it isn't. And so learning to cherish the process of growth is a side point. The thing you made me think of with what you were saying is like, I think another thing, sort of a tangent, but is like the people who are falling victim to these distractions and these horrible things that are being fed to people are of course people who are older who have grown into their ways and adjusted to life with these horrible things around them. But I think more so it's young people, children and young adults. And one thing I'm realizing now, as I'm now going to be 26 soon, is like I don't have the same energy level that I had, 4 years ago. So if I'm gonna, go and drink or do these things, fine. I'm not. Everything in moderation is a good practice for everything. Most people, but it's just a fact. Like I'm going to be a little more tired. Next day is going to be a little worse. And so learning to have that self-love, I think, is more difficult when you're younger because you feel so like free and like you have so much time. And as true as that is, like there's no better time than the present to start growing. Um, and I guess, to just kind of finish that point, I think I'm just very grateful to have realized, many years ago these things we're discussing, but I do think people in the younger generations now will come a time if they do free their minds enough from the things that are shackling them, mainstream entertainment, too much distraction, then most people will come to question themselves and their decisions. I hope that we see a time in society where people look around, say, why are we allowing this? Like we have, food protection organizations meant to stop food from having chemicals in them, but those agencies aren't doing anything because food has chemicals. Let's just connect the dots. This is a problem. I don't want to see society continue to operate this way, but it is going to continue to operate this way. So I want to see people become aware of it. And I think, unfortunately, that for a lot of people will be from realizing, like, I haven't been loving myself. And there's a real negative result to that. Physically, your health, mentally, your health, and your circumstances may all be hurt by just lack of self-love.
I mean, especially in your teenage years, especially towards the beginning, it's like everybody's trying to fit in and you either I guess around age 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, within that range, you either one of two things happen. You either continue down the route of neglecting yourself and just not realizing, do I love myself? Do I not love myself? Am I doing things that are healthy for me? You either just and then continue to party and continue to drink uncontrollably and stuff like that. Then the other path is realizing, and you can still do those things. You know, you're a free person. You know, you have free will. You do what you want, right? But you realize that you have to do it in moderation, and you shouldn't be addicted to this stuff. And if you are, you should work to stop being addicted to it. Because I think things like addictions have also become normalized, and we tell people it's okay to be addicted to something like partying because you're having fun, right? Um, I'm not going to say you can't have fun by doing that, but I think a lot of people are using that as an outlet, for example, to escape themselves. And something I thought of is that, particularly young individuals, a lot of us don't realize that it's like, I have to do this now because one day I'm not going to be able to. One day I'm going to be too old to do
Mhm.
this, and I have to party up when I'm young. But we don't realize that the effect of what we do to our body and what we consume now, how it affects us in later years, 2 years down the
Mhm.
line, 5 years, 40 years down the line. It's like, for example, if you drink all the time from ages your teenage years till your mid 20s when you finish college, and then you still drink often and stuff like that, it's like this has an effect, and you might not see it right now because you're not aware of it, but later down the line, you 100% will. That's when it gets to the point of like people are like 40 and they're like, I have gut problems and this and that. Why am I having these health issues? I don't understand. It's like, well, look back to the way you treated yourself. It's like, Truman, I can't tell you that the amount of people that I see that I know on who post on their Snapchat stories of them going to the gym during the day and then at night them getting blackout drunk, just downing the whole tequila bottle. And I'm just like, what this is, it's like we developed this culture of like more people are getting into the gym. That's great. The more people than ever I think are getting into the gym. But we're combining that with, it's also really cool for me to get in shape and look good and feel good and then get completely fucked up almost every night. And it's like, in my eyes, it's like there's a little disconnect here. It's like, yeah, you're doing something really healthy, but then you're also doing something really unhealthy.
Yeah, well, I think the point you're getting at is like there's a difference between working out because you actually see the value, the long-term benefit of doing it, and a difference between that and working out because you want to look good. Now, I'm not going to say I don't want to look good. I go to the gym most days and I enjoy having myself, in a good physical condition. But I absolutely remind myself that if I stop doing this, or if I, balance out every gym session with a party, then it doesn't work. Then I'm not doing anything for the long term. And I think long term thinking is just, it's kind of a bigger topic here. Is like having long term thinking requires some sacrifice of the short term. And if you have built habits for yourself that are not good in the short term, you're either going to continue those habits for the long term or you're going to change them and change your long term. And from a lot of experience, like breaking out of habits is difficult. I was in a fraternity in college. I became a partier for several years of my life. Didn't do any crazy drugs or anything, but I certainly had negative habits that were holding me back. And so I'm not going to go on some like you just got to be persistent, you just got to grind like rant because persistence is absolutely necessary in doing anything in your life that you want to be good at. So that goes without saying. I don't think there's a secret to it other than this, and this was what's worked for me. It's what we were just saying. If you set the goal for yourself, I'm gonna quit this thing. I'm just gonna improve myself. I'm gonna go to the gym every day, but I'm not gonna go to any parties. Well, then you set the picture of the result in your mind, and if you go to the gym 3 days for a week, you're doing good, and then you go to one party, well, then in your mind, you're not going to hit that goal. It's never going to happen because you already missed it. And so people just fall back down and think, I didn't make it. I can't make it. That's why you got to focus on the steps. Like if you go out, for an example, 3 nights a week, and then you want to just cut back, you go out 2 nights a week the next week. That's progress. If you go out 3 nights a week the next week, you don't beat yourself up. You don't make excuses. You just keep looking forward with the same intention. And because it's never step, 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 step. You're always going to fall back a little bit, but you just have to keep looking and recognizing that the steps are the goal, and like the direction is all you need to do is point the compass. And people, I think, don't point their own compass. They like allow society to point it for them. People taking a certain career path because their parents tell them it's right. I know plenty of people like that still in school, getting into medical debt. Like, it's like, do you want this for yourself or someone pointing the compass? And authenticity is a byproduct of self-awareness. Like, you can't be authentic if you don't know who you are. And the more you understand who you are and what you want and what your skill set is and what you like and dislike, then the more you can be that person fully. I think a lot of people are just trying to be likable. Not everyone's going to like you when you are yourself.
Right. That's a really good point. I mean, not everybody is going to like you when you're yourself, and I think a lot of us have like a fear of that. It's like, well, I want everyone to like me, and to a certain biological degree, it's like that's understandable, but
Mm-hmm.
obviously the reality is not everybody's going to like you, and the importance of that is realize that if you only say things and do things to try and please everyone else and get everyone else to like you, I promise you I promise you that you will feel more lonelier than ever. I mean, I know a point in my life where, I used to be friends with, every in like in, middle school and high school and stuff, everyone has like these cliques and stuff. It's like the popular kids, the losers, the middle. I was at one point or another, I was a part of all of those sections. And I can tell you that I didn't fit into any of them. And I especially didn't fit into the popular ones because everybody's trying to be something they're not. And at that time, it got to a point where I felt lonely because it's like I'm not being myself. So I have my own ideas, I have my own beliefs, I have my own life, but I'm not able to express that to these people. So then you feel lonely, right? Whereas on the flip side, if you build the confidence and the courage within yourself to just be yourself around everybody, then even when the certain people that don't like you, that's okay. Like you root out the people that aren't right for you, because when you just be yourself, you meet that person. It's like I've gotten to this point where most of the time within like the first 2 minutes I have a conversation with someone that I first meet, I can tell if like we're gonna be friends or we're not really gonna connect, or I can just tell now.
Totally.
Um
Yep.
and and that's the ability that it gives you, like when you're just being yourself, and they realize it too, like other people pick up on
Mm-hmm.
energy subconsciously or consciously, and it's just like if somebody isn't right for you to be in your life, you guys don't have any similar viewpoints, or you look at life a completely different way and you'll disagree on everything, that's okay, right?
Totally
why
fine.
not why not try to be yourself so that the people that do like you for who you are connect with you, and you build the deepest connection that you could ever possibly reach, whether it's just a friendship or whether it's a romantic relationship. Because on the flip side, you're going to be lonely if you're trying to be someone you're not.
Yeah, I watched this video recently. This guy's like just a couple days ago. This guy was talking about this exact point. The way he said it, I resonated with it so much. He said, his words, not mine. He said, authenticity is polarizing. So when you are yourself, think of yourself like a magnet. Like when you are being your authentic self, you're going to attract people who are also being their authentic self on that same vibration. It's vibrational economics, vibrationomics. I don't know. But equally, you're going to repel the other end of that magnet of you is going to repel people away from you who are not authentic. And so that is like just it's par for the course. You're literally a magnet. You're going to pull the people towards you who are right, push the ones away who are wrong. And a lot of the times, what that looks like physically is, like you said, 2 minutes. You can just tell, like, oh, this person's not aligned to me. We don't have the same sense of humor. We don't even really get kind of where we're coming from. It's just off, and that is literally a vibrational disconnect. And I think the opposite of being authentic is what he called being a chameleon, trying to make everyone like you. And from a magnet perspective, what that looks like is, you're just kind of casting your magnet every direction, and anything that comes towards you, you're gonna just try to match the push pull with it. Oh, what does this one want me to be? How much do I need to pull push every time? And that's just exhausting because you're just putting your energy in tons of different places, putting on a mask. You're gonna end up lonely because you've been all these other people. Maybe you've made friends, but probably not, because chances are you connected with somebody and then you magnetically pulled away because you weren't that. So chances are your real magnetic self, who you actually are vibrating now, you have no one in sight because you haven't been that vibration. You've been being all these other ones. It's a very visualizable concept that I really resonate with because I feel magnetic, very magnetic when I stand in my power, and I'm like, people are gonna hate me. I get tons of messages on TikTok and on Instagram. People just saying, "You're an idiot. You're stupid. How do you believe this shit?" Like, I don't. What are you gonna do? People are not gonna agree with you, but like that can't prevent you from stopping, because who is anyone to tell you you're wrong? Especially people who probably haven't sat and going down the rabbit hole on a laptop for 3 years. Like I have that under my belt. I'm not trying to brag to anyone. It wasn't a pretty period of my life, but I've retained all that information, and who I am now is a reflection of those understandings. So it'd take a lot for people to rattle me, and hateful words will never do it. Maybe some logical arguments can get me interested.
Yeah, I mean, I think something that I think of is, just the quote of, don't take criticism from someone you wouldn't take advice from. It's like, we're gonna let these people talk shit about us and dictate our life path and our life decisions just because they view the world differently from us. I always talk to people about how when people are talking negative to you or saying you're rude because one mistake you made or whatever it is, you have to realize that unless this person has been with you 24/7 since you were a child, which they haven't, the fact is they don't know you and they don't know what you've been through, all the difficult times that you've gone through, whether it was a year's worth in the hole, depressed, life sucks, 5 years in the hole. Maybe you just went through a dark period for a week. What or you, and then all the little, not even, I don't want to use the word little to undermine it, but all the other trials and tribulations that we all go throughout our lives. So you're gonna let
Hmm.
someone's one opinion about you dictate the way you think about yourself. It's like we too often nowadays value other people's opinions of us rather than our own opinions of ourselves. It's like I can sit here and believe let's say I'm cool, right? I'm cool, Brad's cool, whatever. I'm a chill person. But then someone comes along and like, no, Brad, you're not chill, you're annoying. And it's like I'm just gonna let that destroy my entire life. I mean, I think it also comes down to the confidence within ourselves. That's not to say that if somebody online trash talks you and that really does upset you, I'm not saying you're stupid, get over it, right? It's not that simple sometimes. And something like confidence takes time to develop. I mean, I used to be you know, I have my own podcast now. Like, I enjoy meeting people and talking to people. And there was a point in my life where, like, let's say I saw you just anywhere in reality, Truman, in a public space, and you started to try and have a conversation with me, I would want to walk away. I wouldn't want to look you in your eyes. I didn't have the confidence to talk to anybody. I didn't have the confidence to do anything for myself, right? So my point is, I was the complete opposite, and I've made progress in it. And sometimes it takes time to make that progress, but it's time well spent.
Definitely. And you made me think of something there too, which was like valuing other people's opinions of themselves more than their own. And I think that, like, you're kind of getting at is like that comes from people not wanting to form their own opinions about themselves, because they're the chameleon. They don't want to do the introspection to become authentic, because to get from where you might be now to authentic you, it's not really up or down, but from here to here, you have to go through who you've become and who you are temporarily. And sometimes who you are temporarily, you don't like. You don't want to look in the mirror. You don't want to accept you're not making the best choices. So instead, people go farther that way, ignorantly, willfully ignorant. But the fact is, like, that will lead you to a place where you are more movable by other people's words. If all you're ever doing is looking for validation from others to figure out who you are, then when people give you hate, you're going to crumble. But on the flip side, the more you become authentic, the more you know yourself. I mean, I say to myself exactly what you said sometimes. Like, I remind myself, nobody has been with me my whole life. I'm the only person who has as much insight about me in the entire world. So why would I trust anyone? And to finish my point here, what you said, the first thing you said, there's a quote that I love. I basically don't take advice from someone who's not in the position in life that you want to be in. It's more applicable to like business advice. Don't listen to a business expert who's never built $1 million business if you want to build one. They don't know how to do it. They're giving you advice from what they think, but their actions show no progress. I think it's the same thing. It's just like if I'm talking to you, and it's undeniable just from speaking with you for 5 minutes that you've done a lot of self work and introspection. Like I'm gonna be much more open to your advice about, oh, maybe I'm not doing this practice right, or maybe whatever. It's constructive, but it'd be impossible for me to sit here and listen to someone tell me how to meditate who just shows absolutely no signs of self awareness. So I guess, yeah, the point of that being the key is authenticity, and that's gonna make you a force. It's gonna strengthen your resolve. People aren't gonna be able to mess you up and shake you up when you just believe in yourself and don't care. And ideally, that's rooted in a lot of real knowledge and work that you've done to obtain. But even blind confidence is better than listening to people. Just love yourself before you let other people tell you not to.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, look, there's always a healthy degree of like constructive criticism and being open-minded and listening to people 100%. But there are way too many people who are not coming at you with a point of, hey, I understand where you're coming from, but I think this, or maybe you could have. It's not like that. It's just kind of like
Right.
you're stupid or you're an idiot or there's no way you're going to be able to do this and build this for yourself. What are you thinking? Do this the safe route instead, whatever it is. And the other point you brought up that made me feel something inside of because of the journey that I went through, and I know so many people are going through now or will go through when they start to improve their lives is facing those dark parts of yourself. Like that's tough. Like there might be a lot of parts, there might be a lot of hate within you compared to love. Imagine it's like you walking on a tightrope over an abyss and and behind you is just all this shit of I hate myself because I've done this or this person said this about me, and all of that is following you constantly 24/7, and you're tiptoeing one foot in front of the other trying to always escape that. And what you have to do, and what is very difficult, is instead of keep trying to walk through the tightrope and escape from yourself, you slowly turn around, you look all that shit in the face, and you say, "All right, I'm gonna walk into this, and I'm gonna deal with this."
Yeah.
And it's a lot, but I think when you're able to, I don't want to say throw yourself into the pit and into the darkness, but in a sense you are. You're sitting with yourself and facing all those dark parts of yourself. It's like instead of every time a negative thought comes up of, oh yeah, I hate myself. Instead of just I hate myself, I'm gonna go watch YouTube now, or I'm gonna put on a movie, or I'm gonna start scrolling on my phone because I need to escape my thoughts. It's I hate myself. Wait, why do I hate myself? And once you start asking yourself why, it's like then you start getting the answers. And most of the time, the answer is going to be irrational. Maybe you made one mistake in the past, and now that's dictated your entire identity of yourself. But you then start to realize like, oh wait, this one event of this one mistake that I made makes me think that I hate myself now. Like I don't. This is ruining my entire life. Why do I? And then you start to think to yourself a little bit more positive. Like why am I letting this destroy my entire life? And then that goes then down the cycle of I think shifting your perspective and mindset about yourself, and then that translates to every other area of your life. Like once you can clean out the shit in your mind, you can not only help other people clean it out of theirs, but it's just cleaning your mind out then applies to every other area of your life. It's like you're figuring out stuff with maybe your business or your schoolwork or whatever you're doing. I have found in my personal experience that when I started to make my mind a better place, I started to not only feel more comfortable in my own skin, but more comfortable with the thoughts that are coming into my mind and which ones to pay attention to and which ones to acknowledge because they're there,
Hmm.
but not let them take hold of me and have me go down the rabbit hole for the rest of the night of I messed up, so now my life is never going to be okay and this and that. Because I think you always have to realize, we already know this is like we're always going to make mistakes, no matter how much self improvement, no matter how much self love we have for ourselves, no matter what degree of this, we're always going to make mistakes, and that's okay, right? We're going to upset people, even though we shouldn't. Like it's not the best option, but it happens because we're not conscious in the moment and we do a certain action, or we don't do a certain action that we are conscious of or not conscious of. But the point I'm making is, all this stuff is going to happen. If you can just have muster up just a tiny bit of willpower to realize the state you're in and understand that it doesn't have to be this way forever, that then opens up it takes your spectacle on life from here to here, and then it just slowly opens up more, and you're like, oh wow, wait, life is actually pretty cool. All right, there's all this cool stuff out here.
Like we all have the same amount of time, but it's like, what are you allocating that time to? And a lot of people think about that in regards to like what they're physically doing. I'm talking specifically about when you're thinking about what you're going to do. That is the most important time. Not when you're spending time doing something, but when you're spending the time before you do something thinking about what you're going to do and why. The why is always more important than the what. And so I think people don't spend enough of their time thinking about why they're doing things. They just do what they know, they do what they're being told, they do what they think is all only thing available to them. But if you ask yourself why you're doing things, you'll start to get deeper, and it's like a much easier door to open than the why do I hate myself door. Like most people won't even accept that they hate themselves because they think that sounds extreme. But the fact is, like, if you don't love yourself to a certain extent, you're kind of hating yourself. And so it is a bit polarizing there. So I think the door that I've seen a lot of success opening is the door of like, oh, why am I like, if I get upset, let's say I'm living in LA back 2 years ago and I'm going to work and I'm upset in traffic. I could get mad about the traffic and I could say, fuck this traffic, but then I could try to fight that. And that's still improving, trying to grow that way and not be mad about the traffic. But instead, I could ask myself, why am I going to work here? Is this my only option? If I have to sit in traffic and then traffic's making me unhappy, why am I doing this in the first place? It doesn't seem like the only option, and it happens it wasn't. And I don't think anything is ever the only option. So, point being, I think people need to start spending time just looking around their lives and asking themselves, why am I doing everything I'm doing? Why am I watching the same TV show that I've already seen? Why am I going to the same bar I was here last weekend? And then they'll start to realize, well, I'm doing these things to try to escape growth because growth is hard and distractions are easy. And I think that's kind of the point, like that sits under everything we're saying, is that like growth is not fun. I mean, I think it's fun, but it's not fun at first, and it's not easy. It's never easy. Nothing you're gonna do when you're getting better you're gonna be like, oh, this is relaxing and it doesn't require anything from me. I can just do this. Well, like I'm scrolling Twitter. No, it's the exact opposite. So
I really think no matter what situation you're in, there is something out there for you. Like let's take the worst possible situation of you're you're 30, 40 years old, you're stuck in a job you don't like, you have 5 kids, your wife doesn't work, and like there's no way you can go get around it right now, whatever. Let's say that's the situation. It's like if you have a little bit of free time, it's like maybe you can fit something in there or learn a new skill that maybe makes you a little bit more money or that you enjoy in your free time. I mean, I think taking off of that lesser extreme side, I think, for the more majority of people, we have flexibility. It's becoming, I mean, everything's about awareness because we keep going back to that, but it's realizing what you're spending your time doing. I mean, the classic example I like to give is, if you look at your screen time and you're spending 5 hours scrolling per day, it's like, well, imagine you allocated that 5 hours to going to the gym for 45 minutes and then journaling about your life and what you want to improve for another 30 minutes. And it's just like now so much time and so many more positive activities can throw into your life and make everything so much better. And originally you thought, oh, I don't have the time for that. It's I think the time excuse is definitely something I used to use. But what so many of us have to realize is there is always time. Let's say your goal is to make $1 million and someone else is making 100 million. It's like if they started from ground zero, well then they had the same time as you did.
exactly.
And it's just it's about realizing, and sometimes it takes sacrificing some stuff. I mean, I know there's some times where I'll work a little bit extra when I feel like taking some time off and just playing video games or something. And there's nothing wrong with taking time off and doing that. But sometimes going the extra mile or just doing a little bit more can really help. I think it was yesterday. I was working for a few hours on some business stuff and podcasting, and I was like 2 3 hours in, and I got to the point where I'm like, you know what, I could take a break. Let me, go do this. But then I thought to myself like, well, I'm in a pretty good mood right now, and I probably could get more work done. So I decided to take some more time and get that work done and do more. And at the end of it, I mean, I felt better and I felt more accomplished. And I'm like, now I don't have to do this tomorrow, et cetera, et cetera. Now I have more free time tomorrow, et cetera. And so,
Yeah.
point I'm making, not to run down it too much, but just realizing that we do have time. And sometimes, occasionally, you're gonna have to sacrifice stuff that you enjoy doing. But is it really enjoyment or is it just entertainment? Because it's like you say watching Netflix for the last 3 hours of your night is what makes your world and what makes you feel okay. But it's like maybe that's just the coping mechanism. If you replace the Netflix with going to the gym, doing this, et cetera, then your life would actually be better.
Yeah, and again, that's not going to happen overnight. You're not going to necessarily feel great the next day. You might feel good a little better, but these things compound. Like the best things take time, and the more you do them, they compound on top of each other, and then all of a sudden, like it's like 18 minutes a day or something. If you do 18 minutes a day for a year, you'll be more skilled at that thing than 95% of people. So that's what compels me to play piano every day. I don't feel like I want to play every day. Most days I do, but some days I don't want to. But I hold myself accountable and just say, like, I'm going to sit on the couch otherwise for maybe an hour, maybe 3. So I do have 18 minutes. And I want to be good at piano. I want to have that skill. So I have the time. There's no excuse. I don't think everyone has or necessarily should have that level of self-discipline. I was a gymnast for most of my young life, and so I was taught that. But at the same time, like I do lean more and more towards stronger you get, make your challenges harder. Like 2 years ago, I don't know if I would say the same thing. Like I probably would say, no, like some days you don't want to play, take the day off. And I still think that's true. Like it's always about a balance of like work and play, or for lack of better words. But it's also a measure of how much can you withstand. And like I know my tolerance level is higher for pain and for working and for doing things I might not necessarily want to do, but that I know are the thing that leads me to the path I want. So the point I'm making is, like, as you continue to get better, keep raising the bar for yourself, because you don't know, like, if there's even a ceiling. You might all of a sudden find out like you could just push yourself even harder. You may never go back down that train and have to face down those demons. That might be like a, continual self-improvement's a thing, but that might be a one-time thing where you have to really look back, change course, and then look forward and keep trying to grow. Just push yourself as hard as you can afford to, without sacrificing yourself, self, uh, mental health. And to tie it into the last point, just don't make the excuse you don't have time. Like even in the most extreme circumstance, like the one you described, that person might have the least amount of time in the world. But that's a great example, because there's always someone with less time than you who's making things happen. If you're not seeing the outcomes in your life that you want, there's only one person who's at fault, and that's you.
I mean, there's so much within our control that we like for some reason think isn't within our control. I mean, and I love the point that you made about like what if there like you don't even know if there's a ceiling. Like if you keep you make progress and you keep going higher, it's like maybe there isn't a ceiling. Maybe you're just gonna keep going. And what I've kind of learned from my personal experiences, I really believe like learning is what keeps you young. Learning is the fruit of life. It
Mm-hmm.
makes you happier. It makes you obviously more intelligent, and it just makes you enjoy things better because it's like once you close your mind to what you already know and you believe you know everything, you're doing disservice to yourself because obviously you don't know everything. We're never going to know everything. And so I love asking questions, and I love just watching people's podcasts and listening to this expert in this of like I never knew that. I mean, I know there was I mean, I've been like getting not super obsessed, but I've been focusing a lot more on like my health and like it's like obviously going to the gym is good, but it's like what are the intricacies of like all right, what are the chemicals in the shampoo I'm using? Okay, I made the switch to a more natural thing, et cetera, right?
Mm-hmm.
Caffeine shuts off or blocks a certain avenue of your brain that makes you feel tired, but it's not technically taking the tiredness away. Like you don't feel as tired anymore, but the tiredness and the effects of that tiredness and your lack of sleep is still there. You just don't feel it. So for example, when you become reliant on something like caffeine, you feel like you're okay because you're taking it, but it's a drug, and your your continuous lack of sleep is doing many detriments to your health, even though you're not aware of it at this moment. Just
Yeah.
like little stuff like that, I've been real. Like I've never been addicted to something like coffee, but obviously I've been addicted and like to do some other things more often than other times, or I'm using something that's unhealthy for me that I didn't even know was unhealthy for me. And just understanding that the intricacies of that type of stuff is just making me realize allowing me to optimize my health and what's within my control.
Yeah, and I treat that like a process that is meant to take time. Like I don't have the bandwidth every day to know everything I'm putting in my body is perfect and kind of just like going off course a little bit. Like, but I do have the means to get the information about one thing. Let's say today it's a vitamin company. I've been taking vitamins for a month from this company, and I haven't even checked. Is this a safe company? Are these vitamins real? Do they have poison in them? If I go do that, and then I realize, oh, they are bad. Spend 20 minutes looking, doing my research, and find a good one. Well, then I made a change, and for the rest of my days going forward, or at least for this foreseeable future, I have one aspect of my life, one area, one thing I'm going to touch and consume in my day to day that is better. And I think that's kind of the way. Like, I don't know, I used to struggle like to improve my external circumstances because I wanted everything to change at once. I wanted it to be like, no, like right now I have all this stuff I could try to fix. So like I just want to wait until I have like the money or the time or whatever to do it all. And I totally resonate with that like big change mentality. I still feel that way about a lot of things. But the reality is you can make improvements every day, and those steps will add up. There's like a visual picture where it's like one step every day, like adding up, and then it's like one big step every month, and it's like after a year, it's not even comparison, because you got to fit things into your daily life, and you got to be doing it with intention. Like you got to have again, the why am I doing this? Why am I looking for new vitamins? Because I care about my health. Why do I care about my health? Maybe because I can see that what I'm doing now isn't working, or maybe because I just know there's corruption in the world and I need to be above it. I need to be fighting it in my own reality by being informed. Um, whatever reason it is, I just think, yeah, those baby steps are what gets you to where you want to go in reality. It's never going to be the big jump.
For all of us, it's like our little steps and our little habits are what comprise of our big life, and like the majority of our life is just comprised of little things that we do or have done. There was a point where I wanted to make, like you were saying, in your personal experience, for wanting to make the huge jump all at once. And sometimes when you want that, you don't even make any progress because you're so focused on all the 10 things you have to do that you can't even get one or two of them done because you're just focused on which one should I even do. Oh, I'm not making progress, and you start to overthink about it. I mean, when I first started into getting like into just basic self-improvement concepts of getting in the gym, meditation, it came from the point of like, well, I need to get 10. I have some free time, so it's like I need to get all of these done in one shot in one day. And if I don't get it all in one day, then I don't feel good enough. And what I realized is, I spent so much time overthinking, and even if I and not making the progress I wanted because I'm just focusing on too many things at once. Where if I just focused for like a week straight of getting in the gym, and then after that was set in stone, then I focused on trying meditation, then it would have gone so much more smoothly at the beginning. Um,
Totally.
and I even found that even if I did get those 10 things done in one day, it still wasn't enough. There's always more to do, right?
Right. And you're always going to continue to raise that bar for yourself, which is good. But if you're raising it just on results, then it's bad. You gotta be just trusting in your process and not pushing yourself to. And I always just like to say, like, focus on the why, do the what, but don't think about the when. Like, when you finally feel complete, may be never, it may be tomorrow, but not trying to think about when you're going to get there might just be the only thing you need to do. Because anytime you're up here, looking at the future or thinking about the past. You're not in the present, and there's absolutely zero probability that you're gonna be in a blissful state that is capable of continuing, because maybe you're thinking about the future and you're daydreaming, but that only exists for as long as you're daydreaming. Same thing if you're thinking about a good past memory. You might feel happiness, but the only way to create persistent, long-lasting happiness in the present is by focusing your awareness on the present. It's not all that's necessary, but that is an absolute necessity to even do it.
Right. And I also think that's definitely a difficult task to do, to really focus on the present. And even, I mean, I think there's even times where I'm not conscious enough to enjoy a moment enough as much as I think I could, or really appreciate something that I'm in. I try, and sometimes, I'm really into that moment of bliss, but sometimes, I fail to see it, and then after the fact, I'm like, oh wow, I didn't. I think the concept of like, we don't know how good we had it until it's gone. Like, that's a real phenomenon of, like,
Definitely.
maybe it's a relationship partner, or maybe it's whatever it is. It's like, you can understand the concept, like for example, um in a situation where I'm in a breakup, right? The coming months, my last girlfriend, ex-girlfriend, and I broke up a few months ago, and within that process, like, during, I would say I'm a pretty conscious person. I'm always trying to analyze things, right? And within the relationship, there was a sense of, I'm gonna try and enjoy every moment I have with her, because you never know. Life is life, and who knows when the last moment's gonna be, right? And it's like, you can understand that to a degree when you're in the moment, but I think and it doesn't have to be a negative moment like I'm describing now. But my point is, you don't always know the full experience of what that feels like until you're actually out of it, and then once you're actually out of it, you're like, oh shit. But then there's also the aspect of, like, understanding that, life is life, and you're not going to be able to control every, like, I think the point is, you can only control what you can control. And that's what it all comes down to, because we can't control how someone else feels. In a sense, we can, because maybe we do a certain action or don't do a certain action that makes them feel a certain way. But at the end of the day, I could do something, and one person perceives it as something really bad, and now I'm an asshole. And so I might do the same thing with someone else, and they might perceive it as like, oh no, that's really nice, whatever. So we all have these different perceptions, but I think I got off track of what I was even
No, I
initially
got your
talking
point. I hear
about.
you. No, I completely agree with everything you're saying. And I just had a great quote. I totally just lost it. Um, but no, I mean, I do. I think we're obviously very aligned on this, and like, it's it kind of just bringing it back. Like, it's tough to also have all this, positivity complemented with all this a lot of negativity going on in the world. It's corruption, people selling their souls, whatever. But those two things are related in the sense that, like, the more information you have, the more informed decision you can make. And I think, like, it's not, in my opinion, anymore uh, a possibility that there isn't corruption going on. I think it's almost 100%. I never say things are 100%, but it's as close as it can get that there is corruption, high level, sophisticated corruption going on. So I think knowing and using that information will help me kind of do all these things we're saying in terms of self improvement. Just knowing the world's going to work against you, knowing people are going to work against you, but you just have to be for yourself. Like, that is yeah, that's kind of what how I cope with all the negative stuff that I see. And you know it's all you can do, really. The more you go down that rabbit hole, you're gonna really just be pushed to see, like, everyone has a different reason for why they think they're here on Earth. But for me, like, I saw in a lot of that purpose. I said, okay, well, the world's messed up. If I know about it, then maybe I could start thinking about how to fix it. Seems like a lot of people don't even know it exists. And so knowledge, like, yeah, it allows you to then make new decisions with new information.
Within the state of the world and stuff like that, maybe you are alone or you feel lonely for this time period. And maybe and what I want to say about that is, it's not permanent, because, when you feel lonely, like for example, when I started to make my life a better place, I was very lonely because nobody else around me was doing it. And so I was making my life better. But at the same time, it was like, well, I'm feeling a little socially isolated from a lot of people I know because they're not on like the same wavelength as I am anymore. Um, and to that, I say, you're going to attract the individuals that are on the same or a very similar wavelength, and you're going to be able to have those conversations with people. They're going to naturally flow into your life. Might not be tomorrow, but it will be at a certain time. And then of course, something like loneliness, and a little bit of social isolation may come again. Like, you may have a time where you meet a bunch of people and you're spending a lot of time with these people on the similar wavelength. Maybe there's a time where you have to do some work or do something that's by yourself for a little while, and you do feel a little bit lonely. And so everything always comes in states and stages. And I don't think anything in life is really permanent. Everything is always changing, for good or for bad, or however we want to perceive it, or choose
Yeah.
to perceive it, or subconsciously perceive it, and we don't choose to perceive it. Um, but everything's always changing, and it's just understanding that that is life, and it's not fighting against it and saying everything's always changing. That means my life sucks, and I don't want to be here on Earth anymore. Things aren't as bad as we think they are. At the government level, it might be, but on our more personal level, we have to realize that it's like, you can, with certain information and maybe certain setbacks you've had in your life, and anybody and everyone can make a ton of progress in their life. And it's really your own limiting beliefs that are essentially going to be the only thing that's going to hold you back. A lot of us can, blame us not going down the path that we want to because it's our parents' fault, or it's our friend's fault, or it's this random person online's fault. But at the root of it, we have to realize that everything comes down to us. And this might sound a little bit selfish, but I really don't think it is. Like, everything in the world surrounds around you. It's like, you're here, you're in this body. The world revolves around you, in the sense of like, this is the experience that you're having, and you have to do everything in your power to make it the best experience and most fulfilling experience that you believe you should and you could possibly make it. I also think when something like that is brought up, people are like, "Oh yeah, the best experience I could possibly have," meaning I have to get drunk and I have to get high every night, and I have to enjoy myself. What I mean by what I'm saying is doing the things and going down the life path that you believe is going to fulfill you.
Right. The one that's going to lead you where the place you want to go, and maybe that you're not seeing yet. And I liked so much of what you said. It all ties together so well. Like the idea that everything's temporary. It's so important because, like, to the point you were making a few minutes ago, the good moments are temporary too. So when you're in them, when something is good, don't just be trying to prolong it or like, hold on to it, but also don't, you know, just ignore it. Like pour yourself into the present, good or bad, because it's not going to last. Yes, so blaming other people, right? Like I think that's a really important point where there's truth to that, but then there's two battles you have to take. One is like let's say you're in an abusive relationship and you're not doing the things in your life that you want. You can, in reality, probably actually accurately blame the person who's abusing you for a large portion of why you are not where you are. And this is not to put a person who's in an abusive relationship. I don't know any information about that. I'm not the person who's an expert on that. I go to an expert. And I'm not saying that person's at fault, but in this example, it's like that person has to ask themselves, assuming they have a safe enough environment to leave, am I choosing to be in this situation? And assuming that they have the free will to leave, then they have to escape both the mental belief that someone else is stopping their growth, and then they have to physically stop that person stopping their growth. My point to this is like there are a lot of lesser extremes in life where it might be true someone's holding you back. You might have a friend who's doing this, but at the same, doing something hard you, but at the same time, it always comes back to you because you're choosing to put your time and your energy into these things in the first place. You have to make space. I can't tell you how many times in my life I have attach myself, like for example, with an ex or someone I really wanted it to work with, but it didn't. And then, I'm holding on to her. I can't bear to say goodbye. And then I finally do. And a couple weeks later, the most incredible thing happens, a new opportunity, a new person. And it's not always the next day or even a year later, but you have to make room. However much room something takes up in your physical life, plus your emotional, spiritual, energetic life combined, will be the space that is then allowed when you cut something out of your life. And a lot of people, they want to see change without making change. Circle of influence is this big. Circle of concern is this big. Most people, we can only affect so many things. We can influence our decisions and what we eat and stuff, but most people concern themselves with more than they can influence. I'm concerned about what other people think about me. The goal for everyone should be make your circle of influence the same size as your circle of concern. If you can't change it, don't think about it. Don't waste time. But if you can change it, you have to think about those things, because otherwise they will affect your path in life without you being the person driving which direction you're headed in that case.
Yeah, I mean, it's really easy to get stuck, um, like holding onto all that mental baggage, whether it is thinking of a past person all the time, a friendship or a relationship, or just a certain situation that you held on to, or an event that you wanted to last longer than it did. It's I really like the way you described it of how, it's like when you have all that space taken up, it's like how many, it's like the opportunities are blinded from you, when you're not able to make more room or let go of certain things you can't control. That's what it's all about. I mean, like you said, we worry so much about the things that we can't control, and it's like, you know, it, like probably like between 60 and 90% of our suffering comes from things that we think about that aren't even in our control. It's like we think about this situation that happened a month ago, and now we're sitting here at 9 o'clock at night and thinking to ourselves for the next 3 hours, well, what could I have done differently? Oh, I wish I said this, or I wish I didn't get angry. I wish I did this. And to a degree, those could be positive things to think about. And so when a situation similar to that happens in the future, you now know not to react in that way, or not to say that, or you should say that, or whatever it is, right? But I think so much of the time when we're overthinking and we're thinking about a past situation like that, we're not thinking about it in the sense of, all right, what did I do wrong? How do I make sure I do it better in the future? It's just, I did it wrong. I, it's just that's it. I did it wrong,
That's
and I have to sit
it.
here and suffer for it.
It's a big difference between overthinking and conscious reflection, and they can't be disguised as one another, even though we try to convince ourselves they might be. Yeah, I think you're making a great point. Like if you're looking at the past or thinking about if you're looking at the past, for example, it should be to reflect for the benefit of growth, and uh, accountability. I think that's a huge thing that we're not talking about here, but own up to your mistakes. Like, just be real. Like, if you mess up, just accept it, acknowledge it. But if you're looking to the future, same kind of example, you should be planning. You should be looking to the future to plan what you can do, what actions you can take, not, oh, that would be fun. I wish I had that. I want that. That's daydreaming. And daydreaming without actions are not going to get you anywhere. Um, it's hard for me to say because I love to daydream and I'm big on it. I think it's important to daydream, but it has to come with, you know, planning. It has to come with actionable items that you can say, okay, well, what can I do to get there? And is it achievable? And I think in most cases, everything's achievable. Not to be a motivational speaker, but like, there's literally nothing that you can't do if you set your mind to it. I'm a firm believer in that. And I'm saying that having very little proof that that's actually going to work out for me, because I haven't seen all the things I want materialize, but I just know it. Like, there's no other way that I'm even going to get close without trying and believing. So I'm going to do those things instead.
The pain that we've gone through in our lives in a slightly different light, and instead of just ruminating and dwelling on the pain and overthinking about it in our room at night, using the pain. I mean, people are like, oh, use the pain as fuel. And it's like, I think to a degree this is a real thing. I mean, it's like some of the most beautiful things in existence came out because of a painful situation. Robert Plant, from Led Zeppelin, who made the song "All My Love," which I don't know if you've heard it, but it's an incredible song. And that song is about his child who died from a horrible, medical situation when his kid was like 3 years old. And so that's what his song is about. And it's like from all that pain came a beautiful song. And of course, if Robert Plant had to choose between having the inspiration to make that song and release it and make money off of it compared to the life of his child, of course he would want his child to be alive. But my point is, in these painful situations, and that's an extreme example, of course, think about the less painful, not as severe situations in your own personal life. Of what pain has happened to me that I can use to bring something good into the world. It's like, for example, for me, I mean, it's like a big reason as to why I started a YouTube channel and podcast is because I went through depression. So it's like having gone through depression, having gone through that pain, how can I use that pain to help other people? And it's like, that's what I'm
Yeah.
trying to do with this. So it's just thinking about that in your own personal life because, there's always something that you can do to make your life better and make other people's lives better.
Yeah, you're getting at something I'm really like thinking about a lot recently, which is just this idea that like focusing on serving others is something this world lacks so much. Um, and I think it's like rooted in our like deep biology to help each other and to be kind. But that there's been so many layers added over that, so so much new code telling us that everything's fine. Everyone's fine. We can all take care of ourselves. Like everyone, there's grocery stores around and people can get their food and so I gotta focus on myself and it's justified for me to just care of myself. To a certain extent, sure, that's logical, but love, compassion, connection, those things cannot be replaced. It doesn't matter if society doesn't validate them to be tangible and real, they make a difference. And when we don't have that aspect to our lives, I think everything just feels a lot harder. And so what I'm getting at here is that for people to get to a point where they realize this, but I think the truth is the more you try to help others, the better position you're going to put yourself in. Maybe just that's the way karmic law works. Maybe that's just the hack to the universe, and then it's just like, bing, you get everything you want. Maybe nothing changes forever for some people. But my point is, like, I've seen that the less I focus on me, and the more I'm like, I can help other people. I have knowledge, I have kindness, I have advice, I have experience. These things people need. And the more I focus on just delivering that outwards every day, as many opportunities as I can. I recently started having employees, hiring people, and having people who are coming to me. And I try to add so much kindness to their day. And what I've seen is like, yeah, they might, think of me less as like a strict boss or whatever in this example, but that's not who I want to be. I want to be the source of truth and of kindness. And in some cases, truth might be hard. It might be, hey, this isn't working out. You're not working hard enough, whatever, in this example. But being truthful, being real, and being kind, I think the more you can do those things to other people, and in a lot of cases, truth is kindness, telling someone the thing they don't want to hear. I've been that person in a lot of my friends' lives and a lot of people I know. I'm like, hey, what's going on? You don't seem like you're reaching your potential, whatever. Being that person is not easy, but I think the more you try to serve others, the more you realize like you have a lot more than you think. You have a lot to offer. And maybe that's the problem. Maybe people don't think they have anything to offer, so they need to get something first to help, but that's a fallacy. Everyone can help someone. There's what I mean to say is every single person can benefit from you one way or another. Even those people we don't connect with or vibe with right away, there is something they could learn from you that could help them, and vice versa with every person we meet. So just hyper focusing on that in every single conversation and thing you do, I think that's the path to start seeing. I don't know what it's not the path to see anything other than just maybe a little bit more self fulfillment, feeling more happy because you're not so busy just worrying about what you can get for yourself. It's like taking time off from being greedy.
Yeah, I love the way you put all of that, and I've started to realize in diving into certain psychology realms and just learning, more about my own experience and just life in general. And I think they found that something like social isolation. I mean, I think there's a huge culture nowadays, especially in like the entrepreneurship realm and just self improvement in general. Of you have to be a lone wolf. You don't need to listen to anyone else. Just go by yourself. Grind 24/7. Just be in your room for 2 years straight, and then they'll see the results. And it's like if you make progress, even if you make progress within that 2 years, if you making progress but also being miserable, social isolation as a whole has a deeper effect on you than like most if not everything else in your life. Like when you aren't surrounded by anybody, everything sucks. It's like everything starts to crumble, even if it seems like it has nothing to do with other people. It still starts to crumble because I think with this lone wolf mentality, we neglect that just fundamentally it's not about a confidence thing and being okay and not even being okay with being alone by yourself. It comes down to fundamentally understanding that as a human being, the human brain needs other people to have a good life. It really is as simple as that. And there isn't a way around that. I mean, it's like you can make as much money as you possibly want in the entire world. But if you're completely alone, I guess unless you're spiritually enlightened and you're on that level, which obviously 99.9% of people aren't, you're not
Yeah.
going to be okay if you have all the money, for example, and you're by yourself, and you never have anyone to talk to or spend time with. I mean, it's like, so I just think it's worth understanding, and I think we already all understand it to a degree that social connection is vital, to be okay, essentially.
What you've reminded me of is something that's really applicable here. It's kind of crazy. It's kind of a new thought for me, but there's a video I watched of these children speaking to rice in the morning. They put 2 jars of rice in the fridge, and on one jar they wrote "I love you" and like put tape on it, and the other they wrote "I hate you." And every morning the kids in this household would go up to each jar of the rice. They'd say "I love you" 3 times to the one jar. They'd say "I hate you" to the other, and they try to do so with emotion. After a month, the "I love you" jar, white rice. The "I hate you" jar, molded rice. And what I think about there is like that proves, maybe with a couple more experiments like that, that's proving our words have power. And if our words have power and we have power, therefore, um, it probably has something to do with the emotion, the energy, the vibration attached to the words that we're speaking that we're resonating. So therefore, it probably has effect on other people. And now what I'm getting at is not the thing we were talking about earlier, where it's like, doesn't matter what people say, like, that's a whole more like surface level point. This is the point of like when you deprive yourself of hearing those words, even "I love you," or you repeat the words "I hate you" or "my day sucks" in your own head, you're coding your subconscious. And we've talked about this on our last podcast. When you code your subconscious with that stuff, you're making it harder and harder for yourself. And a lot of people with that grind mentality, I think, do exactly that. They're like, I'm strong enough to go without anyone else. No one else is on my level, and they may be right. They might not need it in the short term, but I think the point is like, who will you be when you get all the material things you desire? You may be strong and you may be able to really push that pain away, but will you have an absence of suffering, which I think is what we all seek.
Most of my friends are at a college farther away, and I'm doing a lot of work and have a lot of goals for myself. So the point I'm making here is right now in my life, I'm spending a lot of time by myself, and I will openly say that I feel a little bit lonely. Right? It's like it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday night. I'm just working. I'm focusing on my goals, which is great, but
Been there.
I'm not hanging out with anyone else, right?
We
And
love to see
so
it, Brad.
and so you know, a few of my friends are at a college that's like 30 minutes away. And so sometimes, I haven't been, I've been choosing, to work instead of going there. But like this upcoming weekend, I texted them like, you guys free? And like, so this weekend, I'm going to go out there. I'm going to go out to dinner with them. I'm going to spend the night with them, do whatever, have some free time, enjoy myself, enjoy my time with them. Because I understand that my goals are super important. And there was a time in my life where I was actually focusing too much on hanging out with people and I was neglecting myself. But so now this brings up a point that there's too much of both, right? There's too much
Hmm.
of you working only on your goals, and there's too much of spending too much time with other people. And within the last 6 months, I have been in both of those boats. And neither of them are the ideal lifestyle, right? So it's like in my life now, I'm making it a point to try and make more time to hang out with other people, even if that means me getting a little bit less work done in a day. It
Hmm.
because it doesn't matter how much work I get done if I don't feel okay. I mean, how can I, I'm building out a coaching business. Oh, I draw my pen. I'm building out a coaching business, for example, right? And it's like, you know, if I'm telling people, that social connection is super important and stuff, but I'm spending so much time doing that, but I'm neglecting myself, there's a balance to everything. So it's like I have to work on myself and the business and all this other stuff, the goals that I have as well. There's a point I'm making. There's a balance to everything. One without the other um, is never going to be good enough.
No, yeah, I completely agree. And I think the my add-on to that point would be like, for those wondering, like, what's the compass then? Like, how do I know? It might be logical to you. It might seem like, you know your own schedule, you know your own habits. So it probably will be, but more than anything, it has to come, I think, from judging like your mental health, but by maybe like less metrics than those that are defined in society. So let's just call it flow. I love the word flow. When I'm in playing piano or when you're drumming, there's a period of time when you are in a flow state. You're not thinking about what time is it? What am I going to do next? That is the goal. That is, in my opinion, a state of happiness that can be achieved in the long term. And I feel that state of flow when I'm at work some days for hours at a time. And there's a difference between that and just numb unconsciousness, which is like the complete other side of that. It's not the same thing to sit and get lost in playing an instrument as it is to sit and get lost in watching TV. Those are exactly polar. One is you're putting all of your consciousness away and you're just allowing your subconscious to absorb. And the other is you're putting all of your conscious into something and you're allowing your subconscious to speak. And like that's what I think is the goal is like balance it based on am I in the flow state? Like, if am I forcing myself to work day in, day out, then I'm not getting anything out of this, and it just feels like every 10 minutes I want to be done. Maybe you just need a weekend, and you take the weekend, you come back. Maybe you need another day. Maybe you need another weekend, but you're going to find that equilibrium. But you have to maintain a strong vision of what you're going towards, your goal, and a strong connection with self-awareness. Like, how am I really feeling? Am I neglecting the side of myself that wants connection? Am I neglecting the side of myself that needs to work harder to achieve the things I desire? And you find that area more and more, but it's not about being perfect. It's just about making the best decisions you can each day. Not being mean to yourself for what you choose to do.
I mean, too often we can beat ourselves up because we didn't get enough done or we did something or whatever it is. And you're not going to make any progress by beating yourself up. You can acknowledge that, all right, maybe you should have done something for an extra hour, but that's okay. I did it today and that's fine. And, maybe tomorrow I will try to. And, those small steps, that's slow progress. And what you brought up about the flow state, something that I've been discovering more in depth recently. I didn't even know, but there's like so I'm taking a positive psychology course, college level course, and there's actually a whole science behind the flow state, and psychologists are doing tons of studies on this, which is like I've always heard of the flow state, and I know it's like me, I know what it feels like to be one with the music and stuff, but I didn't know there's a whole science behind it, and
Yeah.
to relate it to your point of like, what is there even a roof on the things you can accomplish? I think a lot of these psychologists and these scientists, in doing their studies, were studying a lot of like elite athletes and stuff, and it's like they realize that when they're in flow, like really skilled skiers and elite sports like that, where it takes an incredible amount of concentration and just bliss to be able to smooth down and do that. They found that like they thought the limit that they could go over. Like I think one of the examples was like they thought the longest jump that a skier can make and land was like 40 feet off the mountain while in the air before they land. And, through, I don't know how they measured the flow state, but when they were in the flow state and they were able to measure it, they made it like over 250 feet. So it's like, and then all of these other areas, it's like they're making so much progress. And apparently, when you're in that flow state, your prefrontal cortex gets turned off. So it's like this is responsible for like your perception of time, even your sense of self. So it's like, like the example of like probably that you felt when playing piano, when I feel when I'm playing drums. Like I'm just one with the music. I forget my life even exists and I'm just doing it. There's a part of our brain that apparently literally shuts off when we're in that state. And that's just that's super fascinating to me. And
Such a big rabbit hole.
It's crazy.
It turns off your perception of self. It's like that's the craziest thing to me because like if we can exist without our perception that we are existing and the belief that we have to maintain this perception to be it, that's so profound because what it really means is that you are not your thoughts, you're not all this mental clutter.
Thanks for coming on, Truman. Where can people check out your content and all of the social media stuff?
Yeah, so TikTok, you can find me at True Talks, like that. Never got good at that screen pointing thing yet. And that's basically it. I'm working on some channels right now, business stuff, but uh, TikTok's my main place. And thanks so much for having me. I know there's probably a lot of stuff we didn't get to, but I'm for real. If you'd like to have me back anytime, I would love to be here. It's always great chatting with you, Brad.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Truman. We'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.